Welcome back to the channel. I'm Tom Quigley, bringing the latest tips, tricks and techniques for all your contemporary painting and drawing needs, and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be based on abstract architecture. Now the reason why I've done this is that we could go down the route of perspective, like 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective. We all know it's quite difficult to do that, and trying to get everyone involved and energized about doing architecture is quite difficult. The second thing that you could also do with architecture is architectural features, which is also a really nice avenue to go down. Particularly today, we're going to be looking at the Vorticists, in particular Wyndham Lewis and the manifesto that he created in the movement of Vorticism. Now what I'm going to use as my subject matter is the art department itself. You could use your home environment, it could be skyscrapers in the city centre or any other buildings for that matter, or geometrical shapes and patterns in there. Now if you can't go and take your own photographs, you know you can just go on the internet and collect some images, but it's always more personal if you collect your own. Anyway, I'm going to get straight to it because I've got quite a lot to show you today, and I'll talk you through in the video. See you in a minute. Okay, so we're ready to start. And the first thing that I always tend to do is do a 1 centimetre border just for presentation purposes. And then going to write the title, which is architecture. I'm just going to do some simple 3D lettering, just so it's very easy to see and it looks really presentable. Now after I've done that, I am then going to look at the artist's work. So this is all the Vorticism work, in particular Wyndham Lewis, and I've printed it off in just in black and white because it's cheaper and it's a lot easier. I've also beforehand took some photographs of the art department and the surrounding area. Here I've tried to mimic the shapes and the patterns that you can see in the Vorticist piece of work. So geometrical shapes, looking at tones. So I've got some whites, medium greys and very dark tones. I then decided to cut them out around about 3, 4, maybe up to 5 pieces. And then once I've done that, I just need to draw out a rectangle. Now, this rectangle size is 9 centimetres by 12. And inside that rectangle, what I'd like you to do is put some lines in which are for the rule of thirds. So if you've never done the rule of thirds before, it's a compositional technique where you divide up the piece of work into 9 squares, and then you put some focal points or areas of interest on those lines. So you're going to be sticking the collage on vertically and horizontally. And I'll go over that in a little bit more detail in a second. So once I've done that, I'm going to start placing on some of the first pieces on. Now I am going to trim these down a little bit further. So I'm looking at the artwork of the Vorticists, trying to pick out some interesting shapes, following along the lines. So don't just cut out randomly, you've got to follow the lines. And I've done that, as you see, I've already started to place these on, and I've not stuck any of these down at the moment. I'm just planning where I'm going to put them. Now you can do more than one collage if you want to. I'm just doing one for demonstration purposes. Now once you're happy with your composition, start gluing them down and put them all into place. Now as I continue to do that, the next thing that we're going to be doing is an observational drawing. So what that enables you to do is look at the photo montage a little bit more in detail, make sure that you're looking hard for things that you really didn't notice before, because that's going to help you later on in the piece of work. Now first of all, you just outline the pieces, and then you're going to add some of the darker tones afterwards. Now what I want you to think about is actually not trying to create something that is photorealistic from the image, but almost mimicking shapes and patterns, because the Vorticists tried to simplify some of the shapes and the patterns that they used to see. So they didn't do it exactly right, but it's got an element or an essence of what it's supposed to be. So you might see closely here that I've put those dashes down. They are mimicking windows or maybe air vents. So think about those types of things in your work. Again, in this area of the drawing, which is supposed to be the brick wall, it's going to be quite time consuming to put each individual brick in. So what I'm actually going to do is use the rubber and just to rub back some elements in there to create this crisscross kind of shape. So as I say, it's not going to be totally right, but it's got an element of it. Now the next one is quite a fun drawing really, to be honest. It's going to be some speed drawing, and it's a rotational drawing, which we're going to be using the continuous line technique. Now we're going to be using 4 different types of pens. You can choose whichever one you want to. Try and actually have a thicker one and some thinner ones. Now I've already started here, and you're just going to have 30 seconds on each one. So I've already started on that one, nearly about to finish, and then I rotate my book and then go back in with another colour, overlapping the drawing that I had before. Flip it around again, change the colour, overlap it again. And what you'll end up is these layered drawings over the top of each other, and finally ended up with a final piece. And it looks quite nice, actually. And some elements that you can take from here into larger pieces later on in the work that we're going to be doing. So after I've got all this information that I've built up, so I've looked at my collage, I've got an observational drawing, I've also got some continuous line drawings, I'm actually going to start the piece on the right hand side. Now this is going to be a larger piece, it's going to take a bit more time, and the materials that you'll need for this are some masking tape, a craft knife, some black ink, and that should be fine. Now what you're going to be doing, as I've just pointed out here, you're going to be looking at those elements, and then you're going to be taking parts that you want into your big piece. So here I'm taking the masking tape and I'm just using some larger sections. If you imagine the masking tape as some of those lines, then that's what they are going to be. But first of all, it's going to be starting off quite simple. I'm not doing anything particular. Just remind yourself though, on the edges of the masking tape, try and trim them down so they're neat, because otherwise if you tear it, you'll get some real uneven edges which won't look that attractive in the piece of work. Now this is going to be a little bit more advanced. Get your masking tape on a board, a cutting board, and then what you're going to do is actually cut it down and make it thinner strips. On this one that I'm doing here, I'm actually doing something a little bit more advanced as well. I'm just working into it and doing it a different shape. So then I'm peeling them off, and then you've got a variety of line. You've just got to make sure you stick them down properly and the edges are on top of another piece of masking tape so they don't look messy when you take them off. Now this will all be revealed shortly, and as I continue putting these pieces of masking tapes on here, start thinking about the piece as a whole. Think about which areas are quite empty and need some areas of interest or a focal point, and then also try and think about you know, bringing the piece together. Now I'm using a dilution of black Indian ink here with water. Now you need it quite you know, diluted, to be honest, but you can test it on a piece of paper. You almost want just a medium tone. Now I've hair dried it. Now on mine, I've actually messed up a little bit, and I was going to start again. I thought, do you know what? There's no point, and I will show you the reason why, because this might happen to a few of you or students in general. So you'll see that the ink has crept underneath the masking tape. And I was quite disappointed when it first happened. I thought, do you know what, shall I do a new one? And thought to myself, actually, no, just to point out that mistakes do happen, but sometimes you've just got to work with them. And these happy mistakes can also, you know, end up being the best part of the piece of work. So what I've actually done is using these black lines where those mistakes happened and try to work around them. So I've also, remember, looking at the Vorticism piece of work, they tend to put dark lines next to the white ones. So I've put some variety of thicknesses next to them. They're using a permanent marker and also a fine liner. And then I've tried to keep on doing that throughout the piece of work. Now you don't want to do any too large areas using the black permanent marker, because it will run out far too quickly. So these are just like almost thicker lines, if you will. Now I'm also putting some almost like these spiderweb lines. These were through the windows in the images that I was looking before. Also these little areas, I'm not doing anything randomly. They're being taken from the images and I'm using them in my own special way. Now you'll see on these lines that I'm doing here, I can go over lines, okay, so don't be afraid of doing that. You can create these other layers. Now this is the second bit that I want to do, blocking out some large areas. So I'm using pure black Indian ink here, and I'm just working out certain areas that I feel would be nice to have these negative spaces. So I've got areas of calm in the piece of work, and I've also got areas of focus, which could also have these extra details. So I'm going to continue doing that for a short while, making sure that I'm happy, try and be as neat as possible. You can dilute the ink if you want to and have these layers of ink over the top to create these different surfaces. Here what I'm just doing is actually a white gel pen, and you can actually blend it just by using water. So I did that a couple of times, which I thought was a quite nice technique. You can either do that over black paper, or here obviously I'm doing it over the black ink. Now as I continue doing this here, I've decided to put some more white gel pen in, adding some lighter details. just thinking where do I want certain aspects of it. Now the last thing that I'm going to do is put some tone, so going from dark to light, adding some hatching, and that's it. I'm going to leave it on that one. Now this is for the finale. I'm going to look at these shapes, identifying what shapes have I made, and then what I'm going to do is collect some foam board. Now if you haven't got any foam board, just use cardboard. Now what I did with my piece of work, once it's dried, I photocopied it. Now you can either take a picture and send it to your printer if you want to. I got 4 copies. Now here's my foam board. As I say, you can use cardboard if you want to. If you've got access to foam board, then try and use that. And what I'm going to do here is create 6 shapes. Now one shape would lead into the other one, so I've done one shape there, and these are all inspired by the shapes that I've been creating, and one shape leads from another one. I don't know if you can see that. So one shape, the larger one at the bottom, and then the others that almost like a jigsaw, if you so you will. So once I've done that, I'm using a craft knife, cutting them all out nice and neatly. It does take a few attempts across the lines, but be patient and you'll end up with a nice piece of work. Now with your photocopy, turn it over, and then what you're going to do is just put some Pritt stick, or you can use PBA if you so wish. You just have to wait to dry a little bit longer. Now I did try this before, putting the photocopy directly on one sheet of foam board and then cutting into it. What I found that I had to wait though is the photocopy would tear and rip. So this is the reason why I've done this. So I've done them all separately, and also when you cut them out, you can just literally cut along the line of the foam board, and you actually get a really nice neat edge. So I do that for all of the shapes, making sure that they're all nice and neat there. And also when you're placing them on the photocopy, try and put them in the interesting areas, just in case there's areas of your work which are quite bland. You don't want the foam board to be on those areas. So I've got my pieces now, and I'm now going to create a sculpture. Now the sculpture that I've decided to make, to be honest, is just by slotting the pieces together. So you'll just need a steady base, so 2 pieces vertical and then a horizontal piece to connect them together. Now there's no real rules with this, to be honest. All you're looking for is a stable structure that isn't going to fall over, and try and make it interesting from all angles. Now if you need to do more photocopies of foam board on your piece of work, please have a go and make as large as you possibly can. Now you can see there I'm just slotting them in together. You've just got to be careful that the area that you've cut out is not too wide. If you do, don't worry about it. You just have to use some maybe glue gun to glue it together. So here I've got my 3 areas stuck together. I've got white on the other side. It's entirely up to you if you want to put another photocopy in the inside, or leave it white, or paint it black. So here I'm just going to keep on going, keep on adding all these things together until my structure is complete. Now there you go. It's quite a small structure, to be honest. You could follow this on by adding it into a Lightroom, taking some really nice photography with it, which could add to your topic.
Well, that's it, guys, for another tutorial. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was informative. Just remember, just because I use certain materials or processes related to architecture, it doesn't mean that you can't relate them to other subjects. It's really important that when you're taking on board techniques and processes, try and think to yourself, how can I adapt it? How can I relate it to my own topic? Because the things that I've shown you today aren't just related to architecture. They can be applied to absolutely anything. If you enjoyed this video or you found it of value for yourself, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. It will help the channel grow so much, and I really do appreciate it. I'm planning 2 more tutorials for this week. I'll keep them to myself and let you know in due course. But until then, guys, I will leave you to it. See you soon. Bye-bye.